What kind of drew you to talking about this psalm this morning?
Well, I wonder if you've ever been on Spotify and you've found like a song that you really like and can press this little button that says repeat and it can kind of go around and around. You can listen to the song again and again. And I often think with a psalm like Psalm 139, it's like a song that we kind of constantly need to remember in ourselves. We
Mm.
need to, we search for purpose, we search for belonging, we want to be known. And Psalm 139 is just one of those scriptures that kind of just needs to be on repeat. It needs to be in our mind constantly. Otherwise, we tend to kind of forget, I guess, how significant we are and how known we are. So I'm like, if I could put Psalm 139, there's probably a song that I can put on repeat with it. It's like, it's just that great scripture. You have searched me, you know me, you know when I sit, when I rise, you discern my
It,
going out, my lying down.
it's a
And then
banger.
there's that last little verse, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. So I
Mm.
just think it's a repeated common verse that we need so much.
And it's interesting, as you say, knowing what our nature is like. There's this promise in the Bible about God knowing us, but we need to be reminded over what is it do you think about this verse in particular that provides a bit of insight into what we need deep in our own hearts?
Well, I think when we kind of read that, it's like, man, God knows us. And, we want to be known. We have this incessant sense of wanting to be, I guess, people, but
Mm.
we want people to know us. We want to be successful. We have this constant messaging from our world around what success looks like. But when we know that we are loved by God, then that kind of success dissipates a little bit because we know that, in God's eyes, we are all we need to be. We don't need to meet up to any other standard. So I think it's just so important for our sense of belonging and purpose in the world to know that we are loved by God.
Yeah, and I love the fact that before a word is on our tongues, God knows it. Like it's almost like this is telling us that He can read our minds. He knows what we're thinking about, He knows what we need, He knows our heart's desires. But why do you think it's so important that even though He knows all this about us, He still wants us to communicate these things to Him personally?
Oh, that's just the relational nature of God. God has always been very relational. So it's that sense of saying, hey, I want you to know how loved you are. And, out of that, you'll love me more. And so that depth of relationship that we have with God can just be so much more enhanced when there's this ongoing kind of discussion around that. But I'm really challenged by that last little one. It says, such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. It's like, we kind of know this is hard work, and that's why it needs to be repeated for us. It seems unbelievable that we'd be so loved and so known by God. And He just wants us to know that. And out of that, we know Him.
Yeah, and when it sinks in, I think it makes us a lot more gracious with others as well. I'm for some reason reminded of an old song. People who know it might be familiar with the lyrics. It says, I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. And
Yeah,
this fear that we have that other people will take us wrong or won't get us or won't get our intentions. At least when
yeah,
we know that God gets us, we
totally.
can be a little more gracious with others. Whereas when we don't have that assurance, I think it makes me a lot more reactive with others as well.
Imagine having grace with others. I mean, the world would be a different place.
What a concept.
Yeah, it's
You,
certainly something we can all keep learning.
You know what I find really interesting about this, and I'm just going to throw a spanner in the works that's a little bit different from the idea in that song that you mentioned, Andrew. The
Yeah.
fact that, my intentions are good. Well, actually, the fact that God knows every thought, everything about us, and we know that in our minds there's some dark places, right? There are
Sure.
some dark nooks and crannies that we're like, oh my gosh, like God knows all those horrible things that you think, anything you've ever done, and yet still He
Yeah,
loves us. I
yeah.
think that is phenomenal. And I think getting your head around that is really difficult to get your head around.
Hence, you need it on repeat.
Yeah, you do.
That's what we need to kind of keep remembering this. I mean, we can kind of quote it when we remember it, but I'm like, imagine if we remember that when we wake up in the morning every day.
So, what's one thing for you then, Grant, when it comes to a verse like this? I mean, you talked about it being on repeat, but I think sometimes we can discover there's a part of us that's maybe resistant to letting that truth sink in. How have you learned to open up your heart to a truth like this?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been that journey, and it's taken a long time and it's still ongoing around knowing that it doesn't matter what I achieve in life. It doesn't matter what I have in life. It doesn't matter what people think of me. I am intricately loved by God, and that's enough. I don't
Mm.
need anything more than that. And so, when we live in a world where we're getting so much messaging about, who we need to be, what we need to wear, what we need to have, we'll never meet that. So, knowing this is kind of like it gives us our sense of identity, probably like nothing else can.
And what would your encouragement be to someone who's perhaps not struggling with what other people think of them, but what they think of themselves?
Well, the challenge with that is that what are the messages that we are listening to? So, what is making us think less of ourselves? What messages are we taking into our lives? So, listening to a psalm like this kind of repeatedly, or the wider Psalm 139, is the message that we need to keep feeding ourselves. It's that repetition of spiritual practice in our lives, knowing that God is, our creator. We find ourselves in him. And so it's really just asking ourselves, what messages are we listening to that's feeding our sense of identity?
Hey, thank you so much for joining us as part of the Rhema whānau. We really appreciate your company. And if you'd like to check out more stories like that one, just click here.
In fact, our channel has a whole bunch just like this, stories that can encourage you and inspire you and make you more aware of what other people's lives are like in Aotearoa and around the world. So maybe you could subscribe right here.